All righty, welcome everyone. I'm going to give everyone a couple minutes to log on and join us here today. We are excited. We're talking about custom data in Google Analytics, something that everyone is super interested in. So I am excited to get to it. But again, like I said, we're just going to wait for a few more people to pop on in. If you want to drop a chat and say hi, please say good morning. We'd love to see you. Good morning, everyone. So yeah, this is always a really fun topic. Google Analytics, I feel like everyone I've talked to uses Google Analytics. It's such a common place to use Google Analytics now, but sometimes when it comes to customizing data and actually making it your own, it's a whole other beast, right, Jess?
It is.
Yeah, so tons of different things that we're going to be talking about today. Jess has compiled a huge list of really great resources that I'm going to be sharing throughout the entire presentation. So get ready for that. We are super pumped about that. So 11:01, I'm just going to wait a couple more minutes. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. And we'll get started here in probably the next minute or so. I feel like we're going to be talking. It's weird how Google Analytics has not the market cornered per se, but everyone knows them as this is the analytics research section. Like this is the tool that most people use. So
Right.
Definitely think it's going to be helpful.
Always helps that it's free too for most people.
That's a good point. That's such a good point. Definitely helps that it's free. All right. Well, welcome. I'm going to go ahead and get started so that you guys all can have plenty of time. Good morning, digital marketing lovers. Welcome to our last workshop of the year. Today's topic is working with custom data in Google Analytics. I'm Carolyn Chavetta. I'm the Director of Business Development for Anvil Analytics and Insights, and we're excited to have you join us for about the next hour or so. So you're probably here because you're either a part of a digital marketing team for your company, or maybe you're just generally interested in your skills and Google Analytics. You just want to know more. So I can't wait for you to dive in with our resident web analyst, Jessica Probst. She is fantastic. She does a lot of work for Anvil behind the scenes and is full of tons of knowledge. So I'm super pumped for you to hear what she has to say today. But before we do, I have an important update. You ready for this? Anvil has our own Data Over Instinct conference that is our second annual conference, and it is free this year. That's right, you heard me, it's free. And that's because it's all virtual. Thanks, COVID. So October 15th, we are hosting our Marketing Analytics Summit. It's going to be everything digital marketing professionals would want to know, where they can exchange real world insights about this rapidly changing field of data analytics and digital marketing technology. So if you're in the healthcare industry specifically, or you have an interest, we are also doing a special half-day add-on on October 14th, and I am going to drop that link in the chat box. So if you want to hit that chat down below, make sure that you check that out. That's also where I'm going to be dropping the links for the rest of today, because we have our own YouTube channel. We just want to up our game a little bit more. So today I'm going to be sharing lots of YouTube videos that relate back to everything Jess is going to be talking about today. As a friendly reminder, don't worry about taking notes feverishly. I will be sending over the recording of this webinar in the email that you registered with, and all the links that I am sharing in here as well. You'll get full access to, so no worries about that. As we work through the presentation, feel free to send over any questions or comments. Use that QA button if you want to do it anonymously. Otherwise, throw a question in the chat box, and I'm more than willing to work that in with Jess, and we'll make sure that your question gets answered. We know Google Analytics is very important. So with that, I will hand it over to Jess. Jess, take it away.
Perfect. Thanks, Carolyn. So today, like Carolyn said, we're going to be going through and talking about how to customize your Google Analytics accounts and what customizations are going to be really important for you, which ones can impact the analyses that you're going to be driving, and ultimately, if they're really improving the analyses that you're driving, impacting that bottom line as well. So first and foremost, we're going to start off with what Google Analytics looks like right out of the box without any customizations in it at all. So whenever you install Google Analytics, you're automatically going to have the number of users that are coming to your site, the number of sessions, page views, and even some acquisition data. And these are all important metrics to have. We use these pretty frequently throughout the different analyses that we conduct. But a lot of times they're not answering that big question that you're asking. They're not answering, is your site successful? We could have 20,000 sessions, we could have 100,000 sessions, but if nobody is actually completing that end conversion of filling out the contact form, purchasing a product, whatever it may be, who cares if we have 20,000 sessions? We want that end conversion. So really going through and implementing those goal conversions, the event tracking, and all of these customizations is where the real value will come in for you. So like I said, there's two main things that we get out of customizing Google Analytics accounts. The first is that we're able to align those KPIs with our core business objectives. So when you're looking at KPIs, like I said, a lot of times page views just doesn't cut it. We want to know how much revenue are we driving? How many leads are we getting from our different marketing initiatives? And that's not going to come with the standard out-of-the-box Google Analytics that you have. The second thing is we want to have confidence that the numbers that we're pulling in these reports that we're pulling every month are accurate and that we can trust them. One of the biggest reasons that we see analytics projects fail is because people don't trust the data. So they go through all of this effort to implement this tracking, they go through all the effort of pulling it, they pass along a report along with their recommendations, and then nothing happens because nobody trusts the data. So by adding these customizations, we want to give you the confidence that the data that you have, the data that you installed and you set up is actually going to, you can trust it, you can rely on it. So with that said, we like to group these customizations into 3 different categories. There's customizations that allow you to collect that additional data that really allows you to align your KPIs with your goals. We can add customizations that offer more options for viewing and analyzing the data, so you can do those deep dives. And then we have customizations that provide an extra line of quality assurance. So when tracking breaks, So to start off with, we'll go through and do the customizations that allow you to collect more data. So, sorry guys. Okay. As we're going through here, we want to know what customizations you are adding. I know Carolyn just put a poll up, so if you don't mind, go through and answer that question for us. But in this webinar, we're going to be talking about 3 different groups of customizations that allow you to add additional data to your Google Analytics account. 1 is the custom goals and events. 2 are custom dimensions and metrics. And then we're going to briefly talk about importing data through the measurement protocol. So like I said, this data, these additional data points that you're pulling in are likely going to have the greatest impact on your Google Analytics account, because it really allows you to get closer to that revenue that you're wanting.
And it looks like we have, what customizations have you implemented? So it looks like goals and events is popular, but then there's also a couple people that have said none. So it looks like dimensions and metrics and importing data are sort of low on the totem pole.
Got it. Perfect. Goals and events definitely are probably the first customizations that I would add. So if you're there, you're definitely on the right track. And then we'll get a little bit more in depth with the dimensions and the measurement protocol a little bit later too. So First, we'll start out with custom events. Now, with events, it's important to know that you can track almost anything and everything that's happening on your website. There are very few limitations here, but that doesn't mean that you should go ahead and track every click that a user makes on your site. So the things that we like to track as events in Google Analytics are things that have a high correlation to that goal conversion. So for example, video views. If you know somebody watches a video, has a much higher likelihood of converting, track that video. We want to know because that kind of gives us an indication of what conversions may come later. Button clicks. So if you have an e-commerce site, one of the button clicks that users have to click in order to purchase a product is add to cart. So let's track that as an event as well. It's not the goal, it's not the end conversion, but it's a step along the path that we want to understand when users are taking that. The other thing that we track sometimes as events are the actual conversions themselves. And I'll get more into that on this slide when we talk about goals, but sometimes you actually want to track those goals as events. Now with goals, like I said with events, they're the stepping stones to the goals. There may not be the actual goals themselves. These goals should directly tie to your business objectives. So for a lead gen site, it may be contact us form submissions. It may be phone calls. Even if you're an e-commerce site, phone calls might be important if you're getting a lot of sales over the phone. For a blog site, it might be blog subscriptions. Now, if you're a lead gen site and you also have a blog, especially if the blog isn't paid for, blog subscriptions themselves are not really going to drive that needle. It's not going to push that needle forward. So maybe just tracking those as events instead of goals is your best option there. But really identifying what on your site is going to push that needle. And these should be the goals that you add. A lot of times we tell people, for a lot of sites, 2 to 3 goals is all you need. You don't have to use all 20. 2 to 3 a lot of times is very sufficient. So those are just some of the examples. I know whenever you go into Google Analytics, you have 4 different options for creating goals. We recommend sticking with 2 of them. The option to create a goal based on an event, or the option to create a goal based off of a destination page. We wouldn't recommend using the other 2 options that you have, we just don't find them as actionable. So stick with those 2. And you use them in different scenarios. For our Anvil site, if somebody fills out our contact us form, they receive a pop-up that says, thank you, your submission has been received, kind of like you see here. If that's the case and it doesn't take you to an actual thank you page, we're going to have to add an event tag to that pop-up that's there. That way, whenever the pop-up appears on the screen, an event fires and we can create a goal based off that event. Now, if you actually have a thank you page on your site, which one of these options is not better than the other, it's just a different way of doing things. But if you have that thank you page on your site, what you can do is actually create a destination goal. So with that, you come in, you add that destination URL, it's set up as a goal. One thing to keep in mind, we use this a lot, we work with a lot of healthcare providers that either have hiring initiatives out or have a third-party website that they're using to actually schedule appointments. In some of those instances, we haven't been able to get Google Analytics on that third-party site for whatever the case may be, but we're still able to track that conversion using this destination goal. Because what we'll do is once that form is filled out, we'll redirect the users back to the primary domain, to that thank you page, and we use that to track that conversion. Now, one thing to keep in mind with that is that you need to make sure that you have the appropriate referral exclusions in place. Without those referral exclusions, it's going to take, everything that happened before the form submit on the primary domain as one session, and then it's going to end the session whenever you go to the third-party site and start a new one on that thank you page. Adding that referral exclusion to your account tells Google Analytics to see that all as one session. So that's something to keep in mind if that's an avenue that you have to take. Now, like I said, goals are very important, and they are what you should, primarily be focused on whenever you do your different analyses. Google Analytics knows this, and so fortunately, they have a column that once you set up their goals in all of their standard reports for the most part, you can see goal conversion rates. This is an example of an acquisition report that we've pulled in Google Analytics. And you can see that if we wouldn't have goals in Google Analytics, we would probably think paid search is performing much better than social. We're getting more users, we're getting more sessions. But then once we've added our goal data, we can see that we're actually getting more conversions from social than paid search, or this client was. So what we can know from that is maybe we need to narrow that audience that we're getting in paid search. Maybe we're targeting too broad there. Maybe, we need to put more money into social. Maybe there's more opportunity there that there's not in paid search. So different things like that, it's extremely important to go through, have these goals so you can see that data in all of your different reports and you don't have to rely on sessions. Now, another cool thing is here in this report where we have all goals selected, you can actually go through and pick an individual goal to see the goal conversion rate for that specific goal. Like I said, we have worked on a hiring initiative, and on one of our websites, we found, looking at the device report, we found that desktop users were much more likely to complete the actual application. But then when we looked at mobile users, we saw that mobile users were much more likely to actually sign up for a job alert, to be notified of future jobs that are posted. So knowing this, we could even, identify and customize the experience that each of these different user types were seeing on their site. So that kind of sums up custom goals and events. Once again, we have our YouTube channel. We definitely have other resources on there going into specifics on exactly how to set up each one of those different goals or events. So definitely check that out. But now we'll take a dive into custom dimensions. And with what the dimensions are in Google Analytics are like the categorical data that you're seeing. So the pages, the acquisition channels, desktop versus mobile, that kind of thing is what we're referring to whenever we say dimensions. So there's three main purposes for custom dimensions. The first is to provide additional context. So one time we had a healthcare provider come to us and they were offering several different classes. For example, how to be a better babysitter, how to do CPR, basic first aid. They had a whole list of classes that was way more than 20. So we were never going to be able to track each of these individual classes as a goal themselves, just because we only get 20 goals in our account. So what we had to do was count all class registrations as one goal. From there, we were able to capture the name of the class as a custom dimension so we could pass through. So we had that more granular data that we could use as well. The second reason is to connect hits from the same session and sessions from the same users. So this is not something that's that's standard out of the box with Google Analytics. What we'd have to do is go in and add a session ID or a user ID. That way we could say this event, this page view, and this event were all from the same session, and that these two sessions were from this user. So we can kind of go through and tie all of that together, but you have to add a unique session ID that's generated randomly through Google Tag Manager, and then pass that through as the custom dimension in Google Analytics. The third reason that custom dimensions really come into play is that they can help us integrate Google Analytics with other systems. So a lot of times we pass a GCL ID through from Google Ads if we're running Google Ads, or we can pass a user ID from, maybe a CRM system like HubSpot into Google Analytics, so we can use that to pair with our CRM data in a third-party BI platform. So lots of, different ways that these custom dimensions can be used. So the first, I mentioned GCL IDs. This is an extremely important thing. GCL IDs are attached to the user that has visited the site from a Google ad. So one way that this has helped us in the past is we had a client and they were tracking conversions in their reporting view in Google Analytics. From there, they were passing those conversions to Google Ads, so it would help them optimize their different campaigns that they were running. It's very important to have that data in Google Ads as well. So one time they added a filter, and the filter excluded way too much information from their reporting view. So they lost a ton of conversion data that they would have otherwise had. Now, fortunately, this client was, capturing the GCL IDs in a custom dimension, and they had a unfiltered view in Google Analytics. So what we were able to do was to go into the unfiltered view, look at all of the conversions that had a GCL ID attached to them, and download that into a CSV. From there, we cleaned it up, got the columns right that Google Ads requires, the GCL ID, the name of the conversion, when it happened, the conversion value, all that good stuff. We cleaned that CSV up, and then we were able to manually import those conversions back to Google Ads. That way we didn't lose any of that in this process of, going back and trying to get some of that data from that was unintentionally filtered out. The next are custom metrics. So these are the actual metrics are the numbers in Google Analytics. So number of goals, goal conversion rate, time on site, all of that kind of thing. So once again, they can provide additional context. Going back to the example with the different classes, some of these people, like for the How to Be a Babysitter class, were registering 2 children on the same registration form. So the number of registration forms submitted did not equal the number of actual attendees for the class. What we did was capture the number of registrants on the form and passed it through to Google Analytics as a custom metric. This allowed us to, like I said, get the actual number of attendees instead of registration forms submitted. Next, you can create calculated metrics and collect data that GA would otherwise sample. So a good example of the last 2 bullet points there, we had a client that was concerned about page load times. And there is a page load times report in Google Analytics, but unfortunately, Google Analytics samples that data pretty heavily. In fact, you only see 10% of page load times. So that data can be pretty unreliable if you just go by that. So what we were able to do is we created a custom metric, with custom JavaScript in GTM that captured the page load time for every single page. So that was our custom metric. From there, once that was in Google Analytics, we created a calculated metric with the page load time that was our custom metric, divided by the number of page views. So then we were able to see that average for all pages on the site, for all users. So it gave us a lot more accurate data to work with, and we could really make those assumptions. So with the measurement protocol, the measurement protocol is used to connect any data from any device connected to the internet into your Google Analytics account. So it's extremely powerful. You have all of this data at your fingertips that you can import into Google Analytics. So, common use cases of this are CRM data being imported into Google Analytics. You have ERP data sometimes being imported into Google Analytics, and even data from like point of sales terminals. That's all in there. Now, some of the most common, reasons why people connect those two sources is to import refund data if you're an e-commerce site. This allows you to kind of see, okay, maybe this campaign that we were running with free shipping encouraged a lot of people to buy things, but it also had very high returns compared to this other campaign that we were running over here that had good sales and it didn't have as many returns coming back. So things like that are definitely important to have. Adding and changing a lead status from your CRM system is important, and adding in offline conversions. As far as the offline conversions goes, I know some of the third-party pixels that you guys may already be using use the measurement protocol to pass that data into Google Analytics. So the example that comes to mind first for me is CallRail. So CallRail is a call tracking system that, I'm really sorry guys, I don't know what's happening here. CallRail is a third-party tracking system that we use, and what it does is when we add that pixel to the site, it dynamically switches out the phone number on the site. So then we're able to track the source that started the site session with the actual phone call. Now, typically whenever you implement the measurement protocol, it's not something that the standard digital marketer or maybe even web analyst can do, but looking to your dev team to really help implement that is going to be super important. Maybe even a data architect there. So from here, from CallRail's perspective, it's extremely easy to integrate. All you have to do is add your domain name, your Google Analytics ID, and CallRail sets everything up for you based on that. So what actually happens is when somebody calls from your website, CallRail sends an event to Google Analytics. This event has the category of, or the event category of phone, for example. And then from that goal, or from that event, you can create a goal. So this is a great example of how we're using custom events, custom goals, and the measurement protocol, all to really beef up the data that's pulling into our Google Analytics software. So extremely powerful stuff when you start combining all of these different custom dimensions and events and goals and the measurement protocol. You get an enormous amount of more data. So next, moving forward, we will take a look into customizations that allow you to help you analyze the data that you have collected. So what that does, we want to analyze the data that is most important to us. If we're taking the time to go through and add these custom dimensions and metrics, we want to be able to see them. And, so that data that we are adding, we know is important. We have to be able to see that. And that's what custom reports can do for us. Another thing to keep in mind is that groundbreaking insights that you have and that you will pull from this data rarely come from aggregated data. So a lot of the times you'll have to create custom segments. Those are the two that we really focus on in this category as far as analyzing data, and we'll dive a little bit deeper into both of those now. So custom segments are great because unlike a filter in Google Analytics, they don't alter your data. They simply give you a different view of it. And you can actually add up to 4 segments at a time, so you can compare how they are interacting on your site. In this example, we've set it up to where people that are viewing our careers page are probably not people that are interested in purchasing a product or hearing more about our products. Consumers and job seekers have 2 very different purposes for coming to the site. So if you have 2 different groups of users like this on your site, you need to make that obvious in your analyses. That way you don't lump them all together, and it kind of muddies the water a little bit of why some people aren't converting like others. Well, they're not going to convert like others because they have different purposes for going to your site. That's one reason why we would use custom segments. The second is to really identify why one group took an action and the other group didn't. So if we have a group of converters, we can compare them to the non-converters. And if we see that a lot of the converters have viewed this video or viewed this page and our non-converters didn't get to that page or they didn't see that video, you know, maybe we need to adjust the flow of our site to make sure that they see that video or they see those pages. We need to make that more prominent to them. So these are two ways, two main reasons why we use custom segments whenever we go through and analyze this data. Custom reports, on the other hand, allow you to analyze the custom or calculated metrics that you created. So when you're going through the standard reports, there is no option to add the custom and calculated metrics. Those have to be viewed in a custom report. And if you don't need to view them, there was no point in creating them. So whenever you go in to analyze them, you have to create a custom report. Analyzing custom dimensions is a little bit different because you can add a secondary dimension to any report, any standard report in Google Analytics. So you can add like the second column here with that, you know, with that custom dimension that you created. Now, one thing that we've noticed though, some of these dimensions aren't the primary dimension in any report, kind of like host name. And we always think it's important to have an understanding of what subdomains are most popular on your site, you know, where are most sessions living. With that, we could add hostname as a secondary dimension in any report. Let's, you know, looking at the device report again, but it would say mobile anvilinsights.com, and then it would give us the sessions, our mobile workshops.anvilinsights.com, and then it would give us the sessions. We couldn't see just the hostname aggregated as a whole. So sometimes you don't need that level of granularity, and adding it into a custom report allows you to see that bigger picture. So like I said, custom reports give you the flexibility to mix and match any of the standard metrics, any of the standard dimensions, or any of the custom ones that you've created, as long as they are within the same scope. And this is kind of what it looks like in Google Analytics whenever you go to create one of these. Like I said, you can see here that you can add any metric or dimension. Now, when I say within the same scope, what that means is that you can't look at a page and then have session duration as your metric. Those two just don't line up. If you have page, you have to look at time on page. Those two, you know, go together a little bit better, and they're within the same scope. So, you know, making sure if you get an error whenever you're creating those, it's likely because your metrics and dimensions are talking about two different things, whether that's a hit, a session, or the user. They're at different levels there, and you can't mix those. So then the next thing that we will talk about is, you know, adding customizations that allow you to QA the data that you have flowing in. So all of these customizations are fantastic, and they will help you if they work as expected. And I can guarantee you, especially when you're starting out, you're going to implement things, you're going to think they're working great, and something's not going to be quite right. So QA is super, super important. Like I said, it allows you to trust that data a little bit more as well. So whenever you are QAing, we definitely recommend using Tag Manager to implement these things. You can hard code all this stuff on the site, but it's so much easier to use Tag Manager. Tag Manager also allows a very good preview mode, so you can see exactly what these changes are going to do before you push any of them live. So QA before you go live, QA after the implementation, just to make sure. And then a lot of times whenever you tag events or something like that, they can break whenever website updates are made. So you want to go in and QA as soon as you know some update has been made. It's going to be extremely important. And then QA just, once every 6 months or so, just to make sure that the events that you have are working. And if they're not working, do you need them? Did you miss them when they weren't working? If you don't need them, go ahead and get those out of your Tag Manager account, out of Google Analytics. Adding all of those in creates technical debt that you don't want to have to deal with if you have a bunch of broken things. So once again, go in, QA, just every so often to make sure that everything is working as expected. Because like I said, unfortunately, things break. So whenever you go in, custom alerts can also help. They should not replace your QA processes by any means at all, but they should be there as a backup, as a safety net in case something were to slip through the cracks. So there's 2 types of custom alerts that we create a lot here at Anvil. The first one is an alarm. And whenever you get an alarm, you know something is broken. We set these up to fire, like if we receive less than 5 sessions on a site in a day, or if we consistently get 10 to 20 goal conversions a day and all of a sudden we get 0, we know that there's a problem, and that's probably not a marketing strategy problem, that's a tracking issue. And when we get those alarms, we know we need to go in and immediately look at something. That way we don't get a month down the road and realize, ooh, we don't have any of that data from the last month. Because that's never a fun situation to have to explain. And like I said, things, unfortunately, they just break sometimes. So setting these up allows you to be a little bit more proactive in preventing major issues like that. The second thing that we set up is called a warning. So these relate more to our marketing strategy. So having a warning, instead of saying less than 5 sessions per day like we would with an alarm, maybe we say sessions decreased by like 50% this week compared to last week. Maybe we say goals dropped off 50% this week versus last week. That gives us a heads up that, hey, if we continue at this rate, we may not meet our monthly goals and we need to address that issue now. So once again, taking that proactive step, not necessarily saying something is broken and that, immediately we need to do it now, but something in our strategy didn't go like we planned and we need to fix that. So these alerts, just stay proactive, making sure you don't get to the end of the month and go, oh my gosh, it's all broke. Because that's very frustrating for everybody involved.
Jess, do you have something set up on your calendar where do you check in once a quarter for some of these bigger initiatives, but then your alarms you check once a month? Or is it the idea of that's why you have these in place so that you don't have to put something on your calendar to consistently check?
Yeah, so, a lot of times we'll go in and check bigger initiatives, bigger projects like that, just to make sure everything's working and nothing looks super weird. Now, with these custom alerts, one thing that I didn't mention, and, I thank you for bringing this up, is that whenever you set these up, you actually attach an email address or even a phone number to them. That way, if they do, if they are triggered, you get an email or you get a text message. That way, right then and there. Now, with that, the one thing I want to caveat is whenever I said, we set these up for 50% decrease each week, that may fluctuate. That may be completely normal for some businesses to see that fluctuation week to week. So it's really important that you analyze that for your business. Otherwise, if I set them up to where you get the emails and you're getting an email every week or every other day that something's broken, you're eventually going to ignore the email and then it's completely useless in the first place. So making sure that we're setting these up to where, maybe they're firing like 2 to 3 times a year maybe if things go completely off the rails. We don't want them to get to the point where they're ignored all the time.
That makes complete sense. Make sure you're going to pay attention when you get that email. Yeah.
Right. If you get the email and you don't think, oh, well, I'll get to it in 2 to 3 days, it's probably not worth the email. If you get the email, you know you need to take action now.
It's a good fail safe.
Right. So now that's pretty much all of the customizations that I wanted to go through today. Now, I'm sure you all have like 15 different events or dimensions or anything like that that you want to go in and add. But really, I want to really emphasize the point that planning is the key to success with these. You know, you can very easily, everything can spiral out of control if you haven't planned. So a poll should pop up. We want to know who has a measurement plan in place. So with a measurement plan, they should outline your 3 high-level objectives, like I said, that are really going to push the needle. They're going to outline the exact KPI that you're going to use to measure the success of those goals. And everything should be documented, and everybody in the organization that's involved needs to be on board with this measurement plan. Because this is really what you should use to create these customizations and go off there. Once again, especially with events, you can have 20,000 events on your site, but if you're not going to use them, if you're not going to analyze them, we really recommend not adding them. You know, it's just one more thing that could break that you're going to have to then spend time fixing. And then when your analyst comes in to actually analyze it, they're going to get distracted by some of that noise in the count and maybe won't pay as close of attention to your core KPIs as you would like them to. So once again, manage what gets measured. If you can't manage it, don't add it. You know, we have seen lots and lots of clients start out where they started out on their analytics journey and they said, we're going to measure anything and everything that we possibly can. And they did it and it worked well for them for about 6 months. And then a year to 2, you know, they came to us for a Google Analytics and Google Tag Manager audit and we're like, we spend all of our time fixing things. We don't have any time to analyze anything. So we're not getting the value out of this. Where do we go from here and what's our next step? And at that point, the first thing we always do is sit down with them and create that measurement plan. So if you create it from the start, it helps you avoid a lot of these issues further down the road.
And it looks like most people are working on their measurement plan, probably don't have a great plan in place. But yeah, it's this idea of like thinking critically as a company. And I mean, these aren't easy tasks. We're saying like, what are your KPIs and what are your business goals? These aren't things that you could probably just sit down and go, oh, this is exactly what I need to know. But if you can structure it, you're saying if you can create 1 or 2 or 3 specific things, it'll help you understand, are you actually hitting your goal? And if you're looking at data that has nothing to do with those goals, then what's the point?
Exactly. And I know for a lot of you out there, if you are sitting there going, I have no idea what our high-level business objectives are, trust me, you're not the only one in that shoe. You're not the only ones that we've talked to like that. You know, we see that all the time where it's like, okay, what are we actually trying to accomplish? And starting out very, very high level organization-wide, and then you can even start breaking that down by marketing departments. You know, well, this tactic needs to do this for this campaign, and you can break it out from there. But definitely start high level, use those goals to really align with those big objectives and events we can get to, you know, a little bit later once we have the core things tracked.
So be a standout in your company. Take the initiative, start the conversation, and you'll probably be the only person that does. And now you look like a rock star because here you are bringing up very relevant things.
Right.
Love it.
So another reason why planning is so important is because we've talked about all of these goals, dimensions, metrics. you don't get an unlimited number of these, so use them wisely. Once a goal is created, it can't be deleted, so it's there forever. And you can only have 20 per view. So once again, just because you have 20 doesn't mean you should use them. If you can get by with 2 to 3, use 2 to 3 goals. It's going to take a lot less work for you to set it up, and then you won't get distracted while you're analyzing it. Stick with, sometimes less is more, and that's really our motto here. Dimensions, you get 20 per property. Custom metrics, you get 20 per property. Calculated metrics, you get 5 per view. So once again, just understanding your limitations and, knowing and understanding that 6 months to a year down the road, maybe your goals shift, or maybe there's something else that we need to track now. We want to have the ability to go in and add that tracking. It's really, really unfortunate when we get clients that have all of this data in their Google Analytics account and have used up all 20 of their goals and don't have everything tracked. Because at that point, a lot of times the next go-to is to create a new view, and that won't have any of the historical data in it. So make sure that you're planning ahead with this. The next thing is creating a data governance plan. So understanding and trying to plan ahead so you know that your data is of the highest data integrity that it can be. So creating guidelines for who is implementing these customizations. What processes and procedures do they need to go through? If there's multiple people, making sure that they're all using the same naming conventions is huge. I can't stress naming conventions enough, which may seem like a very minor detail, but when you have multiple people doing these implementations and then different people analyzing it, it can become very confusing very fast if you don't have good naming conventions in place. The QA process, how is that done? Who is handling that? And then if you've created any custom dimensions or metrics, laying out and defining exactly how they're calculated or how they will be pooled is going to increase that transparency and that trust within your organization. So now I know I've said a lot, but I wanted to go through quickly the top 5 tips for you whenever you get started implementing those customizations that you have in mind. Number 1, create that digital measurement plan. It will help you so much. That should be step 1 for everyone. 2, create that data governance policy. That way you don't get into it and 6 months down the road think, oh, we have this here and nothing was done consistently. This helps create that consistency, and it will save your analyst time from cleaning and scrubbing that data, trying to make sense of it. They can just jump right in and start analyzing at that point. The next one is installing Google Analytics through Google Tag Manager. I know I touched briefly on this earlier, but if you install Google Analytics through Tag Manager, it's going to make your life so much easier. If you have Google Analytics hard-coded on your site, you're going to have to go through developers to get all of these customizations added. It kind of becomes a pain, and it's really not scalable if you want to grow your analytics process out. So the one thing that we recommend, implement everything through Google Tag Manager. Not only that, but your digital marketers, your web analysts, they can all handle Google Tag Manager once they get in it and get familiar with the platform. Not only that, but it has a great version control. So if you push something live and it doesn't go quite right, or things change a month down the road, you can roll that back very, very quickly. It's, a snap of a finger and it's done. If you have to go through your development department, that becomes a lot longer of a process. So installing Google Analytics through Google Tag Manager is going to save you a ton of time. And then start with adding your custom goals. Of all of the customizations that we talked about, your custom goals are most important. get those added. We want to start seeing that conversion data flowing in for the different acquisition channels, for the different devices, for all of it. That conversion data is what's really going to push the needle. And then lastly, implement a QA process. You don't want to be that person that has to go back to your boss or to your clients and say, I know this has been running for a month, but we don't have any data, or the data that I thought we had isn't quite right, and so this is how we're going to have to mold it. Implement that QA process and take a step back, take the time to do it. You won't regret it, I promise. So that's all that I have for you today. If there's any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. But with that, I'll turn it back to Carolyn.
Awesome, Jess. Thank you so much. Guys, I know I completely spammed you on the chat with all of those links as we were going through. Not only do you have the link to our Data Over Instinct conference coming up on October 15th, or if you're in the healthcare industry on October 14th, there's a special half day. It's completely free. But I also have given you all of the slides and what the actual video it is that you would be clicking on. So the blog and on goals and events, the YouTube channel, how to integrate Google Analytics with CallRail, custom segments on YouTube videos, our GTM ebook, as well as setting up custom alerts. Jess has done so much work on the back end to make sure that there's all these really cool videos for you to check out. They're like 3 minutes long, 5 minutes long. They are short, to the point, and really, really awesome, great information. That's also going to be in that follow-up email as well. So be on the lookout for that. I'm not seeing any specific questions come through. So Jess, again, I want to thank you for your time and going through all of that information. Obviously super helpful as always. And guys, if you need anything from the Anvil team, I have my contact information in the chat box there. Give me a shout out. And we'd be happy to talk with you about maybe your current project or setting up custom data for you, because we know how to do that, clearly. Jess does. I don't. So, you know. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for spending the morning with us. We will talk to you hopefully soon. And thank you. Yeah, I'm glad you liked the information. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.